Hi everyone, my name is Elena and welcome back to my channel, Speak Crime to Me. On today's episode, I'm just going to give you guys a few updates on the Idaho 4 murders and Bryan Kohberger. Not a whole lot of stuff that I feel like is super relevant to the case, but it's floating out there, so I figured let me just update you all so you know what's going on. One story that came out is not really related to the case, but it's been out in the news, so I figured I would just update you all. It's about Kaylee. I had heard that she was a lover of all things true crime and really followed cases closely. And it has been reported that about a year before Kaylee and her roommates were murdered, she had reported a missing person report. She had reported, basically she thought that she saw a missing person in her hometown and called that into the Idaho police. The missing person's name was Sharon Archer. Thought when she believed that she saw this missing person in a Walmart, and she called in a tip to the Idaho police. Kaylee had reportedly told this police officer basically that the female and her boyfriend were staring at her as she was checking out of the Walmart. And apparently she had seen this missing person, Sharon Archer, on a photo, and then she called the tip line. Police never did find the vehicle that Kaylee had reported missing, but they did find the missing woman a couple of weeks later. Unfortunately, she was found dead in her vehicle. It had submerged into a lake about a couple weeks later. So information doesn't really fit into the case, but I feel like it does show a lot of character of who Kaylee was, so I wanted to share it with you all. So something that had come out about Bryan Kohberger when we finally saw the arrest affidavit and some of the details that the police have released about the 4 murders is that Bryan Kohberger was trying to get an internship with local police departments. And the New York Times is reporting now that Bryan Kohberger did have a online meeting with a police chief in Pullman, Washington, where he was going to school. According to some emails exchanges that the New York Times is reporting, is that basically Coleman said in this email, "It was a great pleasure to meet with you today and share my thoughts and excitement regarding the research assistantship for public safety." This email was sent on April 12th, 2022, so a couple of months before the murders, and the police chief responded, "Great meeting, great to meet and talk with you as well." So apparently it's unclear if Bryan Kohberger actually got this position, as the Pullman Police Department is refusing to speak on this subject. The internship was supposed to start in August 22nd, and the murders occurred on November 13th. There have been a couple of theories that have been rumbling around in the news recently, some from last week, some from this week. One of the recent ones that has been disputed was that Bryan Kohberger was the person who made those noise disturbance calls, as you all have seen. And I had answered one of those times that the police came about a noise complaint, Kaylee as well, and I think there was another time that one of them was on the phone, but that has been disputed. Another theory that I did report on last week was about Bryan Kohberger visiting the Greek restaurant that Xana and Maddie worked at. The owner of that restaurant is disputing that and saying that that is not true. So as of now, they are saying that both of those theories are not true. Another little piece of update that's been rumbling in the news this week is about Bryan Kohberger's public defender. Her name is Ann Taylor. Apparently, Ann Taylor at one point did represent one of the victims, Xana's mom. It has been reported that Ann Taylor was appointed to be a Xana Xana's mom's attorney, but she withdrew that on January 5th. January 5th was the same day of Brian Kohlberger's initial court appearance. And just so you are aware that the judge in this case has issued a stronger gag order where none of the attorneys or even the investigators are allowed to comment on this case. So as always, make sure you're doing your own research. I feel like a lot of this information that's going to be coming out from now until Brian Kohlberger's next court appearance is going to be a lot of probably speculation due to this very strict gag order. Last thing I'm just going to mention, and I saw this online, is an article outlined 10 key mysteries that we still do not know or that we need to find out about this case. So I'm just going to go through those, and as always, comment below if you have any thoughts on these 10 mysteries. So the first one is, why didn't Dylan, the surviving roommate, call 911 after seeing the perpetrator, so Brian Kohlberger, the alleged suspect? I feel like that's probably question number one that everyone has been asking themselves. Number two, and I'm going to read it verbatim. How did reviews of forensic downloads of records from the two surviving roommates, so Bethany and Dylan, phones lead investigators to believe the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m.? Assuming that both surviving roommates consented to dumping their phones for the night in question for investigators to review, likely the morning after when they called 911. But what was the exact content on their phones for investigators to believe this timeline? Question 3. Why the term suspect vehicle 1 is opposed to simply suspect vehicle? To elaborate, is there a second car, or is it just mixed up language from earlier that the investigators used? Question 4. Where was the Layton shoe print found, and what direction was it pointing? We have heard that this shoe print was found near Dylan's room. This is why in this article they say that this is very important information to know. This could very well show the path of the killer. This could very well show the path that the killer took in the house, and basically shed some light on possibly the target of Brian Kohlberger's, and also the order of the how the deaths happen. I'm going to read this verbatim as well. Is the print wasn't discovered until the second team of investigators came into the home. The second investigators team used a special liquid that illuminates blood. It was a Latin print, not a patent visible print. Which the police have been saying that there's so much blood, or there was so much blood at the scene. It begs to question, did the perpetrator try to clean up after the crimes? 5. This is a long one. Why if Kohlberger's car was discovered by Washington State Police on November 29th, did the task force allow him to leave town 2 weeks later? We know that he had left with his dad to drive back from Washington to Pennsylvania for the holidays. And I'm going to read you kind of why they feel like this is very important. This is a big one. Consider Kohlberger matched Dylan's description, owned a white Elantra of the correct year, and the car was missing a front plate, just like the car in the videos that the police had started to review. Pretty unique. Why not get a search warrant and do a sneak and peek in the car at that point to check for DNA and for blood? Why not get Kohlberger's DNA from his garbage in Pullman, Washington at that point? Was the task force simply too overburdened? As it is, Kohlberger, an accused quadruple murderer, ended up at large for another month. In this article, this one is very puzzling, and I do agree that this one is kind of a strange one, so hopefully we'll get more information on this as well. Question 6. Why were the cars stopped in Indiana done? The reported reason has been to check Kohlberger's hands for cuts. But clearly, more than a month after the murders, and the task force already in possession of some very solid evidence against him, the risk and reward ratio for this traffic stop for this tactic was very poor. Would his cuts not have already healed? Would the stop not tip him off that the cops are narrowing in on him? As it was, Kohlberger started wearing gloves when he was back in Pennsylvania and reportedly made an effort to hide his garbage among his neighbors. As it appears to be the only contact he had with the police before his arrest, clearly the stops raised him up. Is there another reason this call was made? Number 7. Why did Kohlberger reportedly take a ridiculous route from the crime scene? Why did Kohlberger reportedly take a ridiculous route from the crime scene back to his house? Was he attempting to avoid leaving a video trail of his car's movements? Had he used his school's access to local video feeds in planning it? Or did he ditch the murder weapon somewhere along the way? It is interesting to note that the circulus, he took this very ridiculous circle route he took later in the day of the murders, brought him right back up to Snake River. Question 8. Why did Kohlberger's phone ping in Moscow at one point when the affidavit says he wasn't there? Was he simply near the border of the two cell tower zones, or did someone have his phone for some reason? Question 9. Why was Kohlberger in Johnson, Idaho, later in the day after the murders? Why did his phone stop reporting there? Another big one. Johnson, Idaho is a remote area roughly 2 hours from Moscow, yet his phone reported there from 5:32 to 5:36 p.m. after the murders, then went dead until 8:30 p.m. Did he ditch the evidence out there? Further, what does this paragraph's concluding sentence mean? This is consistent with the 8458 phone being in the area that the 8458 phone traveled and the hours immediately following the suspected time that homicides occurred. Despite the typo, this is a very mysterious, opaque sentence. Was he in Johnson twice after the murders? And the last question, question 10, is why is there a 6-month continuance on this trial? And I'm not a lawyer or expert here, but I'm just going to read why they say that this is very unusual. With all of the evidence in the affidavit and likely more already gathered, a 6-month delay for a simple probable cause hearing is highly unusual. Understand, that doesn't mean that the trial starts in 6 months. After this hearing, there will be an arraignment where he will plead. Likely a motion to change venue, the discovery process, evidentiary motions and hearings, jury selection, a trial, and then potentially a sentencing. At this rate, the process could take years. Why did the prosecution and judge readily agree on this? Are there plans? Are there plea negotiations going on? Does the prosecution need more time to search for the weapon, to investigate possible prior bad acts? None of these observations to my mind damages the case against Kohlberger. I don't see any of them raising a reasonable doubt, but going forward, it will be the answers to the above that will provide a fuller picture of the prosecution's case. And I couldn't agree more. Like I said, I felt like these were 10 very eye opening questions that make us all think. And please leave your comments below with any of your thoughts or theories or anything like that. So that is all for today's episode. Thank you again for tuning in here on Speak Crime to Me. Until next time.